Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Middle and High School Chorus Professional Learning Community on the Georgia Department of Education platform. This platform was created for educators to collect, collaborate, and support one another. Be sure to set up your notifications to your liking and check back to engage in discussion as often as you wish. Please share this platform with your colleagues so we can continue to grow and share beneficial information specific to middle and high school choral education. The more colleagues active yields more opportunity for us to share and grow from one another. Hi, I'm Brandy Dent, and I will be your middle and high school chorus virtual PLC lead this year. This particular webinar is all about teaching through the standards. There are going to be 3 little short webinars telling you all about the ways that you can teach through your standards. So let's go ahead and start. Typically, we go by the traditional lesson design, beginning with step 1, where we normally identify a topic and we chunk all the content together and we figure out what it is that needs to be covered. And then we decide what we're going to teach, plan a series of lessons, get that done, and then we create an assessment to measure the learning that should have taken place for those lessons, of course. However, what we're finding to be the issue is we're assessing too late in the game. So what do you do when you have a child that didn't understand lesson 1 and you've moved on to lesson 2 or 3 or 4? Well, you assess throughout. So why don't we try the method of backwards planning? As it reads, backwards planning is to plan the assessment first, then plan only lessons that will contribute to student success on that assessment. So, if you want to know what your children should know, figure out what it is you're going to assess before you figure out how you're going to teach it. And that way you know exactly what you're doing. You're not additionally teaching to the test, you're just taking those steps and you're kind of flipping them. So for the backwards design, you want to first identify what the student should know and be able to do by the end of the learning cycle. And then your step 2, you create the assessment so that you can measure that learning. And then step 3, you plan a sequence of lessons that will prepare the students to successfully complete that assessment. So it's the backwards planning design. This system is also known as Understanding by Design, or the UBD framework. The key elements of Understanding by Design learning model was written by Jay McTighe and Grant Wigginson. And so let's look at those. You identify the desired results. You begin with the end sound in mind. Think about those concerts that you have. You already know what you want it to sound like, so you already know how you want to assess the students. You know what goals you have in mind. You just have to figure out how you're going to teach to get them to that particular sound. So begin with the end product in mind. Determine the acceptable evidence. What benchmarks are desirable along the way? If you want them to work on pitch in measure 1 through 4, then how are you going to assess that to know that you can move on to measure 5? Or if you're starting at the end of the music because there's a particular key change, how are you going to get to that? And it's not just about for getting ready for musical works, it's also dealing with musical concepts and new musical elements that you're teaching. And then, of course, you want to create the learning plans. Structure the rehearsals and learning experiences to reach those final goals. So, again, begin with the end in mind. If you don't plan, you could fail. And a lot of times we fail because we don't plan. So, using this diagram, I want you to think about the goals that you set for your literature. You know what the kids should know, decide what the kids should be able to understand, and then in some instances, because we have performers, decide what you want them to do. Keep in mind your essential questions. Maybe it's a bell ringer that you decide to ask your students the essential questions, or maybe it's a question that you ask at the end of the lesson, but establish some. Decide on the musical elements and vocabulary words that you want to pick out. It may be in a piece of literature, or it may just be a particular concept that you want to go over for that particular month or week. And then don't forget, are you wanting your students to perform, create, connect to something, or respond? Of course, you'll find this wonderful list of credits, and I'll be going over this in the webinar number 2 as to how we actually create learning by design. So stay tuned for webinar 5B.